Psst. Hey, want to buy a watch? Hang around. Today we're going to talk about watches that you can get for under $200. See you on the other side. Hi, my name is Burns Hollyman. I'm the consultant's coach, and I help consultants be successful by providing them with online learning, coaching, and tools, tips, and techniques. And today we're going to focus on tools. We're going to focus on a tool that is kind of at the core of everything a consultant does, and that is time, watches. And in particular, we're going to talk about watches under $200 and in some cases under $100. Some disclaimers at the outset. I'm not a watch expert. There's a million great YouTube channels that cover it in depth, so I'm out of my depth in that regard. Number two, I'm picking watches that I personally purchased. There are no expression of gender preferences here other than my own. Many of these watches can be worn in a lot of different ways. So with those things out of the way, what I wanted to do today was really get into not just the watches themselves, and we'll review about 8 of them and give you a sense of where you might want to wear them and how much they go for. And again, these are just personal picks, and I was constrained by, staying within the under $200 limit. But the thing I'd like to start with is a story. Years ago when I was in New York, I was invited by a friend to meet some Italians, and these were Italians. They were from Milan. And I was told it was a super casual cocktail party. What should I wear? Oh, just wear super, super casual. Don't even worry about it. So I showed up wearing blue jeans, a plaid shirt, and some loafers. And I was presentable, but what I walked into was, mamma mia, the men were dressed in tailored Armani suits, and the women were wearing Gucci and all sorts of other designer dresses. And they kind of turned around as I walked through the door and looked at me and gave me sort of a very polite kind of smile, but you could tell I really wasn't wearing the right thing. So the statement I was making to them was, well, I'm casual American style. And they accepted it. It was fine. We had a great evening, and some of those people became friends, and we did a lot of things with them. But they were very elegant. And what I took away from that was 2 things. One is, how you present the first time is important. It's superficial, but it's important. And the second one was that you can always dress down, but you can't dress up. Cary Grant would always show up at different affairs wearing a tuxedo, even if it was a rodeo. But it's very hard to wear rodeo clothes to a masked ball, as it were. One of the key things about consulting is the image you present to your client, because really that's your brand. And in all things, I always say there's only one way to go, and that is to be authentic, be yourself. But you should be conscious of some things, and this overdressing, underdressing thing is one of them. There are a number of ways to approach a client, right? And the first thing you should do is find out what their dress code is. And then you ought to think through, what does that dress code mean to me vis-a-vis my brand? You could dress above it, be underdressed, or dress just like the client does. So if they have business casual, you kind of use generic business casual clothing. But there's some other things you can do. One is you can underdress to show that, you're kind of a roll your sleeves, get up and go and get into operations. The other thing you can do is overdress to make the statement that you are a power player. But if you think about each of these modalities, they have a different effect on the client. So if you overdress, you make someone feel like I felt when I walked through the door with the Italians. Just uncomfortable. I'm not adequate. But the other thing some consultants do is overdress on purpose to connote that they're successful, kind of a power dress for success thing. And then dressing and matching the client can be very useful in terms of acceptance, but it can also mean you're just another one of them, and you may want to reserve your brand to be someone who comes in from outside. So the key here is to find your style. And one of the things I read a while back was that when people size you up for the first time, and yeah, it's superficial, they look at your shoes. And if your shoes are in great shape, they assume you kind of have your act together. But if they're all scruffy, it's a tick against you. And watches are in close second. Now, in this day and age, people don't really, wear watches. Why would you? You've got these things, right? You got a phone, you got it right here. Or the other thing that people tend to wear are what I call the the Ford Taurus of watches, and that is the old iWatch. I mean, you see these everywhere. They're almost invisible. If someone has them on, it's almost like they're not wearing a watch because they're so ubiquitous. So every watch kind of makes a statement about who you are, and you really ought to think about, if you're a watch wearer, what that statement should be. And there's some absurd examples. I'll give you the first one. This is a watch that weighs literally a pound. It's a Russian diving watch, and if you're planning to dive down and pull the Soviet submarine, the Kursk, 350 feet up to the surface, then that's the watch you want to go with. It's also a cheapo. This is an Invictus $150 watch, and I've never worn it because it's so absurd. All it does is tell you time. You might as well use your phone in this case. At the other end of the spectrum is the $3,500 Bell & Ross. Now, this is an aviation watch that next time you're planning to go supersonic in a jet at G10 or G5, definitely wear this one. It's a $3,500 watch, and it screams, I'm just like the diver watch does. Now, there are other watches that are kind of more interesting, and they draw attention, they set you apart, and that's what I would call the sort of vintage look watch. And in this case, this is a, let's see, what brand is it? It's a Swiss watch. It's not a very expensive one. I mean, it's like $1,000, $1,200 in there. And then there is the sort of classical dress watch, which is very minimalist in design, and I favor those for sure. Now, my all-time favorite watch that you really should think about if you have $9,000 is the Rolex Submariner. I think this is just the best all-around watch, well, for me, ever made. But people see $9,000 on your wrist and they assume that you are like with these expensive watches. Now these watches can be a conversation piece. When you're sitting in a conference room before a boring meeting is about to begin, people can say, wow, where'd you get that? And so on and so forth. But each one of those watches makes a different statement about who you are. Now we'll get to my personal favorite in a minute. And generally overall, you're going to find that watches in the under $200 category may well be the way to go in terms of your personal brand. And I've got a few in each of these sort of generic categories that we've just talked about. The first watch that I want to talk about is a classic. It's the Timex MK1 steel chronograph. It's a 42 millimeter, kind of a black dial watch. It's kind of a watch ranger military kind of thing. And by the way, I'm not going to get into all the descriptions. There's link below for all of those. And hang around to the end because I'm going to do a reveal on my favorite watch. In addition, please like and subscribe to the channel if you find this of value. And you'll see a variety of different links below that I think you'll find helpful. So anyway, the Timex watch is keeps on ticking. It's a classic watch, and this one comes with black fabric. But I would direct you to some of the links below because there's a whole bunch in this category made by Timex that are really, really exceptional. And some of the pro watch reviewers on YouTube, and as I said, I'm not one of them, really give it really high marks. The second watch I want to focus on is just a classic. It's the Braun Minimalist analog quartz watch. If you go in a Swiss train station, you'll see sort of these sorts of clocks sitting up on the walls, and it's very minimalist, very clean in design, and it's sort of in this dress watch kind of tradition, and you just can't beat it, and it's so inexpensive that I think you really should take a look at it. Again, descriptions below. The third watch, and this is the one watch that goes outside of the $200 range, it's about $230, is the Tissot Every Time Desire. What a name, but it's a great watch. Again, it's in the tradition of the kind of the dress watch, and it's just very understated, very classical, and it's one that kind of slips in under the radar, and I think makes a statement that says it looks like it's substantial, but it's also a modest watch in terms of its price. So I'd highly recommend you take a look at it as well. I want to tell you about a watch that is really a classic in its own right. It's modeled on the old real stalking horse benchmark here, the Submariner, and that is the Casio EcoMaster dive watch. It's called Eco because it's powered by its solar energy, and that's kind of groovy. But it's a dive watch, and it's under $200. And the one that really dominates in this category, but it's about $100 more, maybe 200 more, is the Seiko diver's watch. That's kind of a vintage classic. But this one has a similar reputation, and you can go dive down deep in it. It is a dive watch. Now, people like to wear sports watches and dive watches because, well, they look great. That's why my favorite is the Rolex Submariner. And it also connotes that you're athletic, which I am not, but that you're very adventuresome. You know, you might be going surfing or whatever with this watch, and it's very reasonable. And when people look at it, they're gonna know that it's not a super expensive diver watch. So quotient will drop significantly compared to wearing, a $9,000 Submariner. Okay, in the creative space, again, if you're working with digerati, video gamers, as I have in the past, there is probably one of the most classic, iconic, inexpensive, amazing sets of watches out there made by Swatch. Now, this happens to be the Bauhaus version. It's just one of a trillion different designs that they have. And these are really fun watches. You can buy one for every day of the week, really, if that's your thing. But they can be really colorful, really stand out, and again, be a great conversation piece. As with all the watches, all the descriptions are in the links below. And by the way, we're going to come up on my favorite in a minute. Hit like and subscribe if this is any value. And by the way, in the comments box below, I'd like you to just tell me what your favorite watches are so we can all find out about them and possibly get our hands on them. That's how I found out about some of the watches that I'm talking about here today. Now, if I had to pick a watch that's stood the test of time. I mean, I became aware of these watches 3 decades ago, and they look as contemporary today as they did back then. They were very popular in Silicon Valley a number of decades ago, but they're still popular in Silicon Valley because of their look and feel. And that is the Skagen Signature watch. Now, it comes in a variety of different styles. It's a larger watch. It's 40 millimeters, but it's not overbearing. Very minimalist and very elegant. It's sort of like the Braun in that sense. There are different watch bands available for it and a variety of different models. You can get it in black and different colors, but it really is very pristine and very minimalist. I think that if you think about minimalism as a style in some of the watches that we've talked about, and the dress watches in particular, they kind of reflect this vibe that you're someone who's just kind of strips everything down to a minimum, that has a good sense of style. And that's kind of on point with a lot of people's brands. They want to be consultants that are just perceived as being people that come in and strip stuff down in a very simplistic way and get it done. So that's just something to think about with all of these watch models, but this one in particular. There's one watch that was regarded as bleeding edge back in the day, and you can buy it for $18 these days, $18 to $20 on Amazon. And that's the Casio Men's Vintage. This is a watch that has a steel watch band, that expands. And it is the nerd's watch. Look at that thing. It's liquid quartz. And you can wear this in a variety of settings. It's an ironical statement to make when you wear these. So these tend to be best worn around creatives. Now, you have to be careful because creatives are usually very leading edge, and this watch can sometimes be perceived as a hipster cliche, but it's a great little watch to wear and just fun to have. And at $18 to $20, you just can't go wrong having one. They're just funny to look at. It's like stepping back into an era when we launched rockets at NASA into space, and all the scientists with their buzz hairdos would look at those watches and say, wow, we're about to land someone on the moon. That's what that watch does for me anyway. Okay, now we're going to come to the last one in the roundup, and it's my favorite. And you may think I'm a little strange for liking it, but it is none other than a brand you've never heard of, maybe. It's Orient watches. Now, they're owned by Seiko. And this is just a rock-solid watch, and it is called the Bambino 2, which is very strange. Orient Bambino, so I'm getting the kind of the Japanese Asian thing, and I'm getting an Italian Bambino thing. It's sort of like a Japanese hipster on top of a Vespa? I don't know. But in any case, it's a great watch, and I'll tell you why. Look at that thing. It's got a retro look to it. It's got a 1950s vibe to it, but it's also a watch that reminds me of a really expensive Jaeger Couture watch. I think I just mispronounced that, which is a really expensive watch. This watch is really just a joy. It's beveled at the edges. It's my go-to. I just wear it. It's a dress watch, and clearly you're going to look overdressed if you're out as a surf party, but it will survive in the water. They say up to 100 meters. It's water resistant. So again, if you get splashed in the shower, you're going to be in good shape. But that's that watch, and I think you definitely ought to think about having one. They're not expensive at all. Okay. There's our roundup. We've covered 8 watches. Why did I pick 8? Because I could only find 8 that I liked under $200, and to spend a lot more time researching it would have been just shopping for more watches. So it's really important that whatever watch you pick, that it reflect who you think you are and who you want your client to see inside you. So that's all I got this week. Buy the ticket, take the ride. See you on the other side.